Good afternoon. My name is Stefanie Kiewit, and together with Anna Vosswinkel and Teresa Rudolph, we were curating this year's Fotograf festival, Uneven Ground. And Uneven Ground, that's where we are, that's where we have to get along with each other, that's where we encounter the other. It's also the ground where we consume and produce images. And for us, it is also referring to the relationship between the photographer and the photographed subject. And we conceived 8 exhibitions. Most of them are group exhibitions. And they are all dealing from different perspectives with the subject of encountering the other. And 2 of these exhibitions are very much linked to this talk that we are having now. There's the exhibition Vast Terrain Shifting Perspective, Vast Perspective Shifting Terrain, which is at Gamu Gallery in Prague. And it's dealing especially with the encounter with a specific social environment. And then there is another exhibition, My Gaze, Your Image, My Image, Your Gaze. It didn't open yet, and we hope that actually after these 2 weeks of confinement, it can open. And this exhibition is more focused on the photographer looking for a certain encounter, looking for a specific person, and the way like how we look at each other. And so I would like to welcome you to this talk, which is entitled Shifting Perspective. And it's the second of a series of talks. There's another one happening tomorrow evening at 7. So welcome to the artists, Kristin Loschert, Tobias Neumann, maybe you can lift up your hand so that everybody knows, Susanne Keichel, Aleksandra Vajd, and Lina. I would like to start with the first image. Yeah, and it's actually, it's an image by Pavel Hečko. It's an artist who's not participating in this talk, but we found his work very interesting as an introduction to the subject. It's a series that Pavel Hečko was working, or it's part of a series that he was photographing in the 80s, with the question, is there something like a real portrait, or would that be? And it is referring to the experience that the image that I see of myself in the mirror is not the same that you see of myself. And referring to this fact, Pavel Hečko made portraits where he asked a person to pose, and then he was repeating or reenacting the pose, but mirrored, and then again mirroring the negative when he was printing the image. So it was also about this reenacting of a pose, and this like an introduction with this question, is there something like a real portrait, or are there different real portraits? And so I now would like to pass the word to Anna.
Thank you. I would like to introduce the artist Kristin Loschert, who lives and works in Berlin. She graduated with a Meisterschülerin at Academy of Visual Arts in Leipzig in 2017, with actually the work that we are talking about now. She works as a freelance photographer and image editor, and she also teaches, for example, at Visual Art Academy Kassel. In the framework of Fotograf Festival, we are showing her work A Letter, which you can now see on a PDF. As part of the exhibition My Gaze, Your Image, My Image, Your Gaze, which will be opened at Kalin Studios on Tuesday, but obviously without a public, and we hope there will be a public later. So the work, A Letter, is a series of portraits of young men who Kristin encountered in the streets and asked them to take portrait sessions with them. She presents each of the portrait series as a loose pile of prints on a table. Every person is one pile somehow. Another part of the work is a letter she wrote, which gave the project its title. So I'm going to read a statement of Kristin about the work. My work, A Letter, is a portrait series of young men. I asked young men on the street if I could portray them. They have been strangers to me, walking by, passing by. Within short moments, I selected them to be my models, looking for something known in the unknown, a remembered image existing in my mind. Some of them were willing to be photographed. I met them 1 or 2 times for a few hours on places they were free to choose themselves. It is an interplay between me and my models, exposing observation and projection on both sides, a silent agreement and that which remains unspoken. Various spirit and sea prints of different sizes and forms with partly open endings of the buried paper are exposed on stacks on tables between glass planes. The form of the prints itself, as well as the presentation, remain open. It varies from each time presenting the work. It is a letter to the unknown. Kristin, maybe we can start the conversation about your work, about the subject, actually. So why men and why young men, and is the curiosity about about another person the driving force behind your work? And how would you describe your urge to do the work? And what was the starting point somehow?
Yeah, I think that actually men were actually not planned at all in the first site, because I was working with women for a long time, beforehand, and but after a while I found out that I would need I was searching for another form of communication in photography, and so I was thinking to ask men, because this was something I felt kind of insecure, and out of insecurity I actually started the project, because I was thinking to overcome things better if you just get closer to things, if you actually kind of overcome fear or nervosity. And that's why I was asking them on the street, and yeah, this was the first step. And yeah, and in the beginning I was really really not knowing whom to ask. I mean, I had a first glimpse about and yeah, on the street, and I was looking for a certain walk or a certain look or a certain gesture also. And yeah, and as you already said, that I was actually looking for something known in the unknown. So I was kind of actually searching for actually somebody whom I felt attracted to. And yeah, that was the beginning. And yeah, maybe this is the first sentence.
Yeah, speaking of attraction, I also wanted to ask about this aspect of desire and how it is reflected in the work. And
yeah.
also, yeah, but maybe first this.
Yeah, for sure it plays a certain role, because this is the first thing you get, because it's actually seconds you have to choose somebody. And this was something I was yeah, which I had to admit myself as well on the street, because you actually quickly actually find out to whom you feel attracted in a way, even if there's no special type in the end, because they all look different. There's no role model or something. And this so desire is something, but also as I said, this non-verbal communication you have, even if you just actually pass by, there is actually something which is not, which hasn't to be outspoken in the end. And then the moment of asking somebody, actually getting in touch for the first time, is also something which actually kind of creates also the desire to admit that you want to take a picture of another person. Is an admittance in a way.
And speaking of shyness, or the shyness to approach someone, and how did it change during the photo shooting? Was there some kind of intimacy? Up to what point? And how is this later reflected maybe in the presentation?
I think that intimacy was, of course, like part of the whole encounter, but more, I would say it was like a distant intimacy, because actually we met in a place where they actually told me where I should come. So I had to be as open as I had to expose myself in the same way. And this was also the point I found very interesting in actually terms of photography as well, because I didn't want to direct the image. I wanted to like leave it open, or like as much open as possible. So becoming, or like getting closer to somebody in terms of kind of like circling around and like moving with the camera as well. So yeah, like very often these like actually like shootings were like non-verbal, or like only a few words were like said. And so just not actually getting to know a person like via words or like via talking, but more by how you actually dance with the camera, like probably. So it's more like a dance, or more like body language thing, like rather than actually putting somebody in a certain place. It's just like about how to deal with like distance and like closeness and all this. Yeah. And I found it very beautiful actually to select different forms of intimacy in a way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you can be intimate even if you don't, in another form. So yeah.
Yeah, for example, this text that you also show in the installation, it's also a form of intimacy in a way. The letter that you're writing that we see in the presentation now. So what significance does it have in the process of the work that you leave the photographic format in this work?
So I was actually starting to write this letter in the very end of the whole process, when I like already was in the lab and was printing the black and white and the color like prints, because I mean the letter is actually kind of a letter to the like brother of my like grandfather, who is he has been missed in war, so he never so he died like probably in the age of 23 or 4 or something.
Mm-hmm.
And his like picture was on the wall and in the family albums, and was spread like everywhere, and I was like encountering this image all the time when I was at my grandfather's place, and this image kind of like haunted me. I was really impressed by his look, and I felt like there was some like similarity, like maybe in his look, or and so that I found like in myself, or and I don't know, and also like how my mother, or actually how my grandmother talked about him, was also very special. So there was a lot of grief about this loss, and I kind of like inherited this in a way. So I felt that he was also kind of a template, like maybe for this like search, and this letter was kind of like a form, or like the possibility of a form to bring him in a way in, even not like naming him in person, but also to like show that there's like like a memory existing, even if it's not my memory at all. So it's like a memory of another like generation, but it actually kind of like switches in my body and in my way of like encountering like new like people also, in a way, probably. And the letter and the form of the letter is also very open, and it's just words and notes also, but still I I kind of actually liked this open form, because it was like, I was just like actually saying these words to me in a way. It was just really like, like talking with myself.
As a search, like the images, like the staples are also searching and rebuilding somehow, like rebuilding a body. So thank you for this insight in your work. And I think we should move over to another artist who also works in a portrait format. And this is Tobias Neumann, who Stephanie will introduce.
So Tobias Neumann, he lives in Berlin, and he studied photography at the Academy of Visual Arts in Leipzig, and also at Al-Balga University of Applied Arts in Amman, Jordan, and at the National Institute of Design in Ahmedabad in India. And his photographic work deals with the possibilities and conditions of the documentary, especially the portrait. In 2018, his book Deux Sœurs, like Two Sisters, was published by Spector Books. And this is also the work that Tobias is showing at this photograph festival. Tobias, this work, Deux Sœurs, it's a work that you have been photographing since a longer period of time, actually very long. You started in 2009, and it's something that is still going on. You actually are still working on it. And you were photographing two sisters in Lomé in Togo. How does it come? Why did you photograph there?
I was interested in photographing in an African or in a West African country because somehow for other continents or countries I haven't been, my perception was shaped by photography in a way, like famous US photography or photography from Asia. And for an African country, I had somehow, I wasn't satisfied with representations I have seen before in press or in arts as well. And it was also focused on always on a certain theme like some problems, environmental problems, humanitarian problems and everything. And I asked myself, but what looks life like apart from this? And that's why I wanted to travel there, to a West African country, and then it became Togo a little bit by chance, I have to say. And I was interested in daily life immediately, I have to say, because this I haven't, somehow I felt that there's a lack in representing it in 2009, I have to say. Now it changed a little bit because of changing media and changing possibilities to social media and cell phones and everything. So it's a little bit more closer now, but at that time I felt really there was a lack of just images of daily life.
And you're especially photographing portraits there. And why are you interested in this genre?
Portraits are interesting to me because I was interested in, I don't want to say the other, but in people in general, and in how do people look and how do they dress and how are conditions. And to me, a portrait still is a possibility to give a kind of presence and a certain gaze. When you look at a portrait, it's not that you look at a person, but you look at a picture of somebody, which still gives an index of a kind of a presence which has been during the time photographed. And this is something I just like to see myself and also to do.
Yeah, and you're doing it in a very special way because it's continuously this, like you were photographing the same sisters. It's not that you were photographing like groups of people, for example, but you really focused on this very concentrated moment, and also again and again. So we see them when they're young, and then they get older also. And maybe you could describe a bit the relation that you had to these sisters.
As first, it wasn't planned that I wanted to take pictures of whatever I see, and then I asked people in the streets, and so I did this for a time, and then I got to know one of the two young women I portrait now intensively, and it still took me a while to say, yeah, okay, but I want my work focused, centered on them, and so I stopped asking people on the street, because somehow it's random, and what do I know about them really? And then I started to take pictures of the two young women. I got to know a little bit better, and by doing that, somehow a friendship developed. So then it was both. I mean, it was a working relationship, because I always had my camera with me, and I told them what I'm doing and that I want to show pictures, and that's not for personal or private use. But also it became a personal friendship. And I concentrated on the two because I wanted to, somehow I felt also that it's always, or not always, but it was often, people in West Africa was a mass, a lot of people, and I wanted to show individuals and somehow give a closer look on showing in different surroundings, in different aspects of daily life. And I never really had the feeling that, okay, now I'm done. So I said, yeah, whenever I had the time and the money, I flew back to Togo for 1 month, 3 months. It depends on how much time I had. And somehow I felt I never had the feeling of finishing, of being finished. And then I had the chance to do a book, and then it took me 3 more years of photographing until I said, okay, now it's the time to finally do this book. But up till now, I keep taking pictures.
Now it's like a little bit of a provocative question. Would you call this a strategy? I mean, you could say, or we know that there are several strategies, like of taking portraits, and yeah, how do you see this approach? Like, do you do this also at other places, for example?
No, like this, I can't do it like this in other places, because I can't go somewhere else, make friends. It's just something that is happening as a strategy. And this is somehow problematic as an artist, that it's not a strategy I can reproduce easily on, let's say, residency stays or something. But somehow it is like it is. And it's for me, it's a problematic thing anyway to go to this former German colony and go there with my camera, and people are very aware that of what's going on. So this long period of time and this intimacy also, I really have, it took me a while until I could show the first pictures, because it took me a while to have the feeling, okay, now I'm able to tell something about other people. And it was not something which happened quickly to me.
And you, like, one last question to you. One of the sister immigrated to Leipzig, and you continued also photographing in Leipzig. Could you say that the way you were photographing then in Leipzig, that it was different?
I wouldn't say the way I'm photographing in Leipzig is different. Of course, in Leipzig, I mean, it took me some time to find a way in portraying, in photographing in Lomé as well, like how I want my pictures look like. And this is the same in Leipzig. And of course, in Leipzig, I don't have this time frame of 1 month or 3 months, and then some pause of some month and then going back. In Leipzig, it's happening sometimes when I think it just might be a good picture. But the mode of hanging out together and spending time, I would say it's a similar way of being together in Leipzig and Lomé.
Okay, thank you, Tobias. I would like to continue with Lina Zacher. So Lina Zacher is based in Halle, and she first studied design and then art education at the Burg Giebichenstein University of Art and Design in Halle. And she works as an independent filmmaker and artist in, she says, like Germany, Madagascar, and the Philippines. And in 2015, she founded, together with Delphine Bishop, the MIO, an association for multimedia to promote intercultural media projects. And after several film installations and a short film project, Fonya, which is the film that we are showing in the festival, is her first feature film production. And her work is based on the examination of socio-political topics with a participatory approach. Lina, you have been working on a film project in a prison in Madagascar. And this film is called Fonya. First of all, what actually does Fonya mean?
Fonya actually is pronounced Funza and just means prison in Malagasy, in the language in Madagascar. And actually I just picked the title because I didn't want to, well, call a film, for example, prison, because then it's really obvious about what it is, and it's immediately I don't know, all those cliches come to your head, what you think when you hear prison, right? So the idea was to, not give the audience an immediate idea what it means actually.
And why Madagascar, and why this prison? And you speak Malagasy, I guess, or it's like, maybe you can tell a bit about your relation to the place and
yes, I don't know, I have a long Madagascar history, maybe you can say it like that. I've been there so many times now, I cannot even count anymore. And I speak Malagasy, and which was very important also, I think, to communicate well with all the prisoners, with the minors. And I came to the prison the first time also kind of by accident, or not really by accident, but actually a friend of mine, he facilitated a small project there. And then one day I just went with him, and I got to know the prisoners and the place and everything. And then I thought I would also like to do some activity with them. And this was back then, 2013. And I did like a small theater project with a friend of mine. And after that, I went back to Germany and I started to study design, and after that, arts or Kunstpädagogik, art education. And then, I always had in my head somehow that I want to return to that place, and that I want to do a project there. Or actually, what was really what made me come back was, and this was also why I really wanted to do that first project. I thought it was so such an inspiring place in so many ways. I mean, of course, first, this is a very also very sad place. I mean, bad living conditions and so on. But what was really striking me somehow was this energy, this drive, this creativity that I saw in the miners and the prisoners. I really felt that they really want to do something. They want to become active. They want to use their energy and to make something out of it. So
would also be good to mention a bit how you worked. So you first did a film workshop there,
yes,
for 4 months, and maybe you explain it.
It started with a film workshop. The idea of this whole project was to actually, like I said, capture that place, capture what I actually found so interesting and so inspiring about that place, what I just tried to explain about this this energy that I somehow saw there or experienced there. And and my idea was to best transport, best show this place and those people, with actually letting the people who really live there show and reflect how they live and what they want to show. So this idea to actually hand over my camera to the prisoners, to let them show their world from their perspective. And like you already mentioned, it started with a workshop. So of course, first the miners had to learn how to use the camera and so on. So there was small introduction into how to handle the camera, and then also film history and composition and so on. And then quickly after that, actually, the miners became very independent and decided themselves what they want to film, what they want to shoot. And it kind of became, how to say, sometimes I think the film started to craft itself. Well, the miners really took over, and they
it is really, I think what I like very much in this film is that there are moments where I actually don't know what they're showing there, or what they try to, some kind of, maybe it's a theater play, but I don't really understand the story. They're totally in their own world. That's nice to see. I mean, when you mentioned that you, with the workshop, you also were teaching film history, did you try to, I mean, film history is so huge, so how did you, was there something that you wanted to direct them in a certain direction, or did you try to show them a large spectrum of different approaches in film?
Not really. I mean, even myself, I don't really come from a film background. I mean, I didn't study film, and which is interesting, because I also sometimes I feel like maybe it's the same way. Like me, I never really learned the rules how to make a film or something like that, but I just did, and so did the minors. I didn't really taught them this is how you make a film, and then this step and this step or something like that. There was nothing like that. But a very important thing that I taught them, and I would also say that this was my direction, because I never had special idea in my head that the film has to be like this, or also with this kind of approach, like giving the camera to them, actually I also hand over all of my control or all of my power, right? But still, I mean, what I would really say was directed by me in a way is that I taught them how to observe and how to maybe perceive their surrounding, their very familiar surrounding, in a different way. So first, it was kind of funny and also strange, because in the beginning, of course, the miners said, well, I mean, it's not interesting to make a documentary film. First, they didn't even really know what documentary is, or what the function of that form is. But then also, I mean, what to show in this very familiar place. I mean, it's a prison, it's walls, and they see it every day, 24 hours. There's nothing interesting about that they want to show or capture on film. So I kind of tried to push them, or to make them, maybe re-experience their surrounding in a different way. For example, like, I don't know, in the end, they looked out for small things, like they would observe little things, for example, flies or ants, or they would really find interest in capturing daily activities or procedures, like skiing or something, like really documenting every step very much in detail, for example, or just shifting their perspective, also their focus on one specific thing. And I hope that you can also see it in the film, that they actually found interest in doing that they actually had fun, I don't know, going around and going on this kind of adventure inside their familiar surrounding, but finding new old things.
That's maybe a nice moment to stop here and to give the word to the next artist and to Anna.
So the next artist I'm going to introduce is Susanne Keichel. Susanne was born in Dresden, where she still lives in Germany. And she studied at the Academy of Visual Arts in Leipzig and graduated 2016 as a master student under Professor Tina Barer. When studying, she started out somehow with portrait photography. For example, her series Garten, where she portrayed all female family members. And from 2010 to 2015, She realized the photo series Geboren 7. Oktober 77, Aleksandra, gestorben 1. Juli 2009, Dresden, ein Kommentar. So this in English is born 7th of October 1977 in Alexandria, died 1st of July in 2009 in Dresden, a commentary. The work is about the racist murder of the Egyptian resident of Dresden, Marwa El-Shabini, at the criminal court in Dresden. And her work Fluchtlinien, Lines of Flight, is ongoing from 2015. And this work is on display at Gamo Gallery in the framework of Fotograf Festival, in the exhibition Vast Terrain, Shifting Perspective, Vast Perspective, Shifting Terrain. So together with works of Tobias and Lina. And the work is a photographic observation as well as research project on the theme of European migration politics and its right-wing populist reactions, especially in her hometown, Dresden. So Susanne, in your work, the encounter with the other plays an important role, but it's not you observing the other somehow, but you are observing how the governmental institutions deal with the arrival of refugees and how people react on the arrival of refugees. For example, as political right-wing activists. What is your personal motivation to do this work over such a long period of time? Is it important that it's an ongoing work, and how did the project evolve through time?
Okay, yes, the topic I encountered this topic again and again in my life. I grew up in Dresden, and in the 90s there was George Gormandai thrown off the moving tram by Nazis, and there was a man from Mozambique, and I never understood this exclusion and people and this hatred. And then Dresden became a stage for great Nazi marches with Nazis from all over Europe from about 2000 on. Always around the February 13th, the day of World War II bombing. And in 2009, Marwa El-Shabini became a victim of a racist and Islamophobic murder in Dresden. You told us. Yes. And in 2014, the Pegida started the demonstrations in Dresden. In January 2015, they had 25,000 participants. And yes, this was the starting point of this work, Fluchtlinien. So.
Mm-hmm. So, and you started to observe your environment, like the city of Dresden, and how did you find these places that you were photographing, and how did this continue? How do you search for the places, or how do you find these places that you're capturing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first places was in my hometown. I started with taking pictures in Pegida demonstrations, and then the summer 2015 was coming, a lot of refugees and history going on and on. And after a while, I recognized that Dresden could not tell the story alone. So can I say this? And I start to include other places. I followed the NSU case in Munich from the beginning. I had been there 2 times for 1 week. And after I was at the Pegida demonstrations and listen what they told there and what they have on the transparencies, I find that NSU was, I don't know, how can I say, the total escalation of this, what Pegida says, and I find this in the NSU case again. And yes, so I decide to take the pictures from NSU court to include in the work. Yes, and
why did you decide, obviously, not to portray any people, for example, some of the migrants? So you decidedly didn't do that, although you were a portrait photographer, as I already mentioned. And yeah, so this was important, of course, as I see that images are only direct in your images. So maybe you can describe this a bit.
Yes, so yes, I worked a lot with portrait, and when I started with this new work, I thought a lot about how can I include the refugees, because I know that was an important part, but I don't know how can I show them. In 2015, there was a lot of press pictures of refugees. They are crying, or they show pictures of crowds of people with yes, with hard subtitles. And so I met these people in the recommendations, for example, and spoke to them. And always when I think, should I ask them, can I take a picture? It felt so wrong. So I never did this. And but in every talk, there was a moment the people took out their phones and start to show me some pictures from houses, family, hometowns, and from their escape. And so I decided to photograph this. Mm. And for me, this was a good solution.
It was also some kind of shifting perspective, because it's the images that the other person did, her or himself. So you're showing the person, you're showing the image of the other person. So it's a kind of image exchange. And so would you say that you also, with your work, you want to correct somehow a one-dimensional image that is communicated through the media, of, for example, the theme of migration?
Yeah, I think it's not possible. Yes, I try to hope, but how many people read Facebook or magazines, and how many people will see this work? So I think it's not possible, but I tried in my way to give other pictures for this topic, I think.
Yeah. So thank you for this insight. And I want to now introduce Aleksandra Vajd, who is an artist based in Prague, and she's not part of the festival exhibiting artist, but we invited her as she's also dealing with the topic of, or theme of, portrait recently. She teaches photography here in Prague, and she's showing, we will show just a brief selection of works that deal with the topic of portrait and also encounter. That's what we chose from the selection. Maybe you could later explain a bit more about the works, because we don't know them ourselves. Aleksandra Vajd studied at FAMU Prague and State University of New York at New Paltz. From 2005 to 2015, she predominantly worked in collaboration with the Czech photographer Hynek Alt. From 2008, she worked as an associate professor at the Academy of Fine Arts and Design in Ljubljana, Slovenia. And since 2008, he heads the Department of Photography at the Academy of Arts, Architecture and Design Umprum in Prague. And she teaches seminars on theory of photography at AVA Ljubljana. So Aleksandra, maybe we could get into the topic by asking how did you encounter the practice or the theme of portrait photography? What is your current interest in the genre? And maybe you could tell a bit about these 3 projects that we chose for the presentation.
So thank you for, first of all, for invitation, for being part of the discussion or conversation. Yeah, I don't know, like, I mean, listening to all of your contributions, like, I feel a little bit like misplaced or, but yeah, like portrait. So it's really like, if you think of a portrait, we talk about like a genre or of a sort. And this served me just after the school to basically to have something very simple at hand, you know. And also I started to live and work together with another person who was as well a photographer. So at first hand, it just offered naturally to take pictures of each other. And through this kind of like very simple portraits, when did you maybe choose one of the images from our common project, Anna?
No,
so, no, but I would just explain, because it's because I don't want to incorporate any kind of narration, which actually this first project does involve, but we basically wanted to just use something very simple that would serve as something as self-maintained, self-sustainable kind of analogy to a garden or something. So we were both artists, we were both photographers, and we started to take pictures of each other. And through this, because we finished the school just at the brink, like of the millennium, so 2000 something, and it served also to exploit and to test various ways of photographic presentation. So we just decided for the portrait to basically somehow manage this kind of transition from analog to digital, and photography as well, like, was by that means trying different ways of presence, yeah, or how it can exist also in a material way, or in a way of in a space, you know. So not anymore to just be flat object hanged on the wall in the frame, and then this kind of like, if I would say, like accumulation or proliferation of portraits or like images of each other caused, in a way, switch, which it was a break, you know, and then this break kind of served us as well, like to see how also what else can also be a portrait of each other, yeah, while not photographing each other, while not having a person on the image. But still, like all these, maybe all these like things that you spoke about, like each one of you, like Kristin, Tobias, and Lina, and like so all these things, you know, like following, like, I don't know, a story of two people, couple, man, woman, unfinished, like family, artists, authorship, and all things that were actually happening at that time in the context of a contemporary art. They were all embedded in this, you know, like as much as like documentary aspect, social aspect, as much as also like what was happening at the time in the art. So, and then like maybe the things that you just showed now, like I would just like to tackle on those. So basically the portrait was something, it was just like a tool, you know, for me in a way, that I just borrowed this kind of, it might have been like, I couldn't have used landscape maybe, yeah, but
sorry, Aleksandra, maybe I could try to share my screen and show this work you were just talking about. Does it work somehow?
No, not yet. But maybe it's not. Maybe it can remain also just in words, you know. And then now, like you must have had like this, images, like maybe, because here, you know, like okay, you have these portraits, and then we started like, okay, fine. So we use different mediums. We used analog. One used Hasselblad, another one used Leica format. So 6:6, but then like a Leica format. And then we started to create books. We started to create exhibitions, pictures in the frame, pictures without a frame, pictures as slide projection, pictures as a self-standing web page. And this was called Man, Woman, Unfinished, basically. And from that, then we started to somehow, you know, use portraits or ourselves to actually also show different kinds of aspects, which were already like not based in, or not portraits, but we were showing the portraits. Yeah. So here we started to talk about the medium. Basically, we used it to show the medium as such. Like we were turning our camera, like, you know, you have Harun Farouki turning a camera towards photographic production or photography making, like making of a photographer, performance of a photographer, or a backstage of something, which includes like labor or props or like environment or so maybe I'm jumping too much, but for us this was just like
we could start to maybe get into to open the discussion again about the question if the practice of representation has changed like the last years due to a different discourse on representation and photography and showing the others somehow. So
I don't know if I can answer to that, because this is very complex, because I really like how because something also happened now through social media, you know, using Instagram, like particularly, which changed completely like this idea of a portrait or self-portrait, or it's even like becoming in a way identity tool, you know, to create your own identity. So I'm like really interested at the moment. It's not that I'm doing any project about this, but I'm interested like how basically this imagery is forming new coming generations, and what kind of identity they hold, you know, through the image, through the visual culture, which is based on this self-representation. Yeah. But for me here, it served totally in the discourse of a medium of photography. I was just interested really like how we can, because it was just a necessity to look like what is actually the medium of photography. So this kind of like a colorblind and blind spot, it's of course it's us, but we are trying to talk about something else. Yeah. So so this was for me, it was portrait genre as of a portrait was for me a vehicle on which I was just like, you know, able to discover or investigate what is happening with the medium as such. Yeah, because it was so simple, it's so simple somehow. But then also which happened then like by coincidence in a way, that I started to use portrait just because I was asked by different people, mainly through the our local art scene, just to I mean, I was commissioned to do a portraits, but my portraits, or like how I try to approach it, was never purely just to show or an image of someone else, but it had all the elements. I was interested how I'm gonna behave, or how my behavior, my setup. I mean, every one of you probably like are familiar with this. I'm not talking anything new, but for me, this became super interesting. Like, how am I influencing the whole situation in order to get one image that I then, of course, chose very intuitively. My approach allowed me, or like the circumstance within which I was providing the image, allowed me to decide totally intuitively for one particular portrait, you know. And then, of course, it happened also that for the Fotograf magazine, which is somehow part of the Fotograf Festival, I was asked or invited to provide images for interviews that are made for each issue separately. Mm-hmm. And it happens so that for the first issue, I could make images in Prague, because the group Institute of Anxiety is from Prague, and this is 6 girls who are like forming the group. But also this was not so simple, you know, like, because it was like it involved 6 people, like it involved like strict, like all of them, like many of them artists or curators, and very, very like self-aware. And at the end, I think I made, I don't know, 6 or 7 versions of what could be part of the magazine at the end. So it also like I was just interested really in the process, like, you know, what is all around that as well, you know, like that later leaves this kind of like image of something, or of a group, for example, like that represents then through the image some group or some kind of idea behind. So I had to also incorporate everything that I felt it's important about this group of, about this institute that represents, to be embedded already in the imagery. And then it happens that the next interview was done between Bina Choi and Lydia Matthews, and they were, of course, both also displaced. One was in Korea, another one was in New York City. So, and I was in Prague, so it was like a time of lockdown, so I could not go anywhere, and they could not come anywhere. So I had to come up with an idea, how do I actually construct the portrait purely online, you know, and that it somehow has a kind of interaction, you know. And so I was much more concerned about like the setup through which we view each other, like through the screen, and how am I also influencing the environment in which I'm having a conversation with these people, and how do I direct them? Basically, like I came up with set of rules or set of like instructions that I would like them to follow when we switch on the online. It's the same, like, you know, we do, but this was just like to create an image. And then
could we have this image again? I led the presentation. I'm sorry, Aleksandra, because there we could see the image that you were talking about at the moment, but it might take some time, so please just
no, maybe also it will be, because precursor of this was as well the set of images of this of Jaro Varga. Actually, he's also an artist, Slovak artist. Maybe if you go to the first image, that it's in this set of 3 images. Yes, this one. And here, this was funny. I was here invited by some magazine also, like to do a portrait of this person, and I didn't know this artist, but I knew his work, and and when we were supposed to meet, I said, okay, you know what? Let's not meet. let's not meet, because let's make it so that I'm just going to tell you where to be, and I'm going to take picture of you. So I actually told him like where he should be from what time. And I was hiding myself in a building, and I was taking pictures of him through the glass. And of course, like, I mean, I knew how he looks, and he probably found how I look, because the art scene is super small. And then on this picture in the middle, the top middle one, there was a person who was just reading a book in the park, yeah. And then I didn't know, like, I wanted to come somehow closer. And so I went to this person, and I told the person, look, like, I disclose what I'm doing, yeah. That I'm playing the game, and I should not be, disclose that I'm actually a photographer. So I asked this person to play with me the game. But at a certain moment, I couldn't anymore like keep it, like as a secret. So I introduced myself to the person which we see on the picture, and then we had a conversation, and then I said to him, listen, but from now on, let's act as we still didn't meet, as we are still strangers, and I'm still keep on going to take pictures of you as if I don't know you, and I'm like just spying on you, So basically there is 3 pictures are like person not knowing that I'm taking pictures of him, and the 4 of them are he already knows, but we are still act like we are strangers. And this is somehow precursor for other images as well, because I, in a sense of like instructing someone, instructing a person how to behave or how to act, or only that I'm always wrapping those instructions in a different kinds of form or in a different kinds of direction. And maybe to the last image, which is actually the same as the ones you chose. Yeah. Okay, this is just like I also wanted to see show that this is like a part of the magazine, whatever. But then we have the third image, which is Karol Radiszewski, and this is again like I also like that, I was like somewhere in the summertime in Slovenia, in like super remote village. This person, I told him, actually this was interesting because he's representing like gay culture. From Poland, which is kind of, they have probably like much more difficult like conditions, and he's super activist in this as well. I wrote him that I just read a book, and the book was, and it just came really natural. I didn't construct it anyhow. I just like, when I was scrolling through his Instagram, I was like realizing, oh my God, like, I really wonder like what kind of life this person had, like how he actually found out, like how he did disclose, how he must have felt certain kind of like impulses, which he was not able to translate, what do they really mean or what it's really happening to him. So, and it's about Edouard Louis. Maybe you know him. He's like a super young generation writer from north of France, and he comes from this like very, very like working class family. So everything is so super problematic, and he's describing in this book like a very vivid like child play, which for him was like one of those discoveries, like how he actually realized like what he feels like towards same sex, like towards like his friends, or and for me this was like such a click. So I basically like I told Karol, who was in Warsaw, that I just read his book, and I will just make him instructions which came from the feeling of that book that I read, and then these instructions became somehow, or these lines or this text became somehow instructions for him to feel me like where I am actually at the moment, like so just we could tune up somehow so that we could click, you know, but being in two different places, but in a way somehow sharing a similar like feeling or emotion or yeah. So and then this picture somehow happened, which was like, you know,
I think this work also relates, I mean, also in a, of course, obviously visual way, but also in what you just said about it, to the work of Susanne, which we saw before, because she also used these techniques, and it's also about getting near to each other, understanding the other perspective through images and through the transmission of global transmission of images. And integrating this new media. And so thank you. It's really, I think that your work matches very well to the conversation, and it's very enriching. And the question of how to represent the other as a counterpart, and reflecting about this photographic representation. I wanted to ask my colleague Stephanie if you would like to add a question, or if maybe the artist, some of the artists might like to pose a question to any of you.
Well, we had, but I could, maybe it would also be interesting to come back to Pavel Hedgko, where we started, in a way, like this question of, is there something like a true portrait, or what would that be? Or where could, if there is something like this truth in a representation, or what would that be, or where would we find it actually? Maybe that's could be a question to everybody of you. For example, Tobias, we were talking about your work, and then you also were mentioning that, yeah, but of course it is important to represent also a place, a living environment, and the conditions where those sisters are living, for example.
Yeah, I think after all criticism to documentary photography and all the not only criticism but all its complexity, and it's still a way on reflecting the world how it is, and talking about conditions of world how it is. And I mean, I'm speaking as a photographer and an artist working with photographer, and so of course I'm reflecting the medium, but I can't help myself. I still see some kind of indexicality or truth in it, in a way. The photographer or the artist has to form. So it's this relationship of the medium, the world, and the photographer, which is interesting to me and is able to show and tell something about a certain perception, fact.
And I think, Lina, for you, I think you might also have your special idea about this, I guess, because you're working with this moment of participation very much. It's not only, it's you creating an image together with a group of people. Is there something for you like a truth of this place, or something that you really found important to represent? Or was it more about, yeah, is it this question of representation? Is this something that you were dealing with in your work, or was it more about staging? Like,
no, not at all. It was not about staging. I mean, this was also the idea of this participatory approach, to actually get this authenticity and this natural and organic way. I mean, you really see the minors, you really I don't know, get this realistic glimpse into their world. So it was no, not about staging it. Yeah, it was somehow about capturing this. Yeah, truth is very, very difficult word, right? Because especially in documentary filmmaking, I don't know if there is a truth, but in this specific project, it is about the perspective of the miners, which is somehow a truth for itself, right? The truth of the miners. But this truth, this overall truth, I don't know if it exists.
Also, I would like to ask Kristin about this question of representation, and somehow I see the work is also about this incapacity, impossibility of capturing a person or representing a person. Maybe you could also elaborate a bit on this question.
Yeah, that's true. I was actually, so when I had like taken like roles of films of each person, and then like later, so yeah, like when the moment came that I had to decide which picture I could like take out to have like the one like single image of a person, I kind of like refused to choose on one image, because I thought that kind of like, yeah, like representation is also like created by ourselves in how we actually look at others. And so that's how the form came also with the like piles and stacks. And I think that yeah, the way how you like look at somebody is like already like a choice how you would like to be the other, like being like represented in a picture, and because the person is kind of like changing all the time, like in front of the camera you can only like get part of a surface maybe, and there, like me for myself, I don't see that a portrait like a portrait which actually kind of lasts forever is not possible in a way. It's only like a short outtake of what the person is or could be, or kind of like actually wants to be maybe. And
it's always changing also, no? In your presentations, the staples are always mixed in each new arrangement. It's a new arrangement, a new form of representation of.
Yeah, and so in this case, actually like in Prague, where I actually cannot be there for the installation, this is the first time that I don't put up the installation myself. So it's you who actually do it, and who like does it, and I'm like very interested in how you would yeah, install the pictures, because this is like something to choose on which picture you want to have on top, for example. This is always that I kind of like decided to, so the last picture I like sometimes, yeah, like picked like blindfolded, like just to, yeah, because of course you have single images which you like more, yeah, like better or like less than the others, but I was really trying to this is also how I think like memory is also like created of a person, because you have like a lot of I don't know, there are like many, I don't know, like layers which are like included in your own like picture of a person. It's not only a picture, it's also like a feeling towards a person. It's smell, it's touch, it's everything. And that's why and it's also like changing, because you're kind of also like sometimes glorifying or making like things worse like than they are. It's also a kind of like how you encounter another person. That's like makes the portrait also. It's like there's no, for me it's like no fixed portrait in the end for me. That's,
You see, I wanted to come back to Susanne because for Susanne the combination also is very important of the images. So which images are next to each other, and there's mostly or often a subtle meaning in combining images, so maybe, yeah, Susanne, you could maybe also respond to this question of how of representation and how you see this happening in your work, and if you see what we talked about, or this Stichwort truth in the artistic work. How is might truth be transported in the way you present your work also?
Yeah, I think it's hard to use this word because it's one through. I think it's a subjective truth, but I always hope there is a meaning or a bigger, yes, that other people can work with these pictures and maybe become new influence or new thoughts and have maybe in your head there are all the press pictures and pictures you saw the last times in the social media, and with all this you come to see this work and maybe something change, or yes,
yeah, that's also your what you really want to reach out with your work, really, and change the discourse.
Yes, and the neighbors are very important. You told this, and I try to find some new neighbors in every installation. And yes, some neighbors are often together when I show this work, but some pictures find new neighbors. And when I take pictures or when I get new pictures, then I find new neighbors and they tell other story than before. That's what I like, or yeah, the history goes on and the picture try to tell what's happened or give a small view in some topics. So
yeah,
I think the neighbors can tell more than one alone. So there is a between the pictures, and this tells a story also. So
yeah,
I hope so.
That's what I wanted to ask you. Yeah, and I think it's also a nice closing word. And
thank you very much for you, all of us, love to participate in the conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for invitation.
Thank you.